Good evening, everyone. I'm Krishna, co-founder and CEO of Etho, and we're building the framework for smart helmets. Helmet manufacturers actually license our technology to build and sell smart motorcycle helmets to consumers. And today I'm here to share you the story of how we started, what's the problem we're solving, and what are the lessons that I learned along my startup journey. So it begins with me. Since I was a kid, I've been obsessed with motorcycles and cars, and I wanted to do something in the industry. And that's why I studied aerospace engineering at Embry-Riddle down in Daytona Beach, Florida. During that time, I really wanted to build flying cars, but unfortunately, I had to settle for autonomous vehicles. So we were building short and long range, frontal collision avoidance systems using short and long range radar. And during that time, I also got back into motorcycling. And there's something that I realized, which is that we've grown much more dependent on our phones over the last decade or so, to whether it be to use GPS or your music or access your Spotify or talk to your friends. We've grown more and more dependent on these phones during our car rides and our motorcycle rides. And over the last couple of years, cars have tried to solve this issue by bringing your phone experience into your infotainment system using Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. Unfortunately, on a motorcycle, there's no such thing as an infotainment system. So the experience is really broken, especially going forward. So for example, today, if as a motorcycle rider, to use GPS alone, you have to pull over and come to a complete stop, or you're forced to take your eyes off the road as you're riding. And if you come across a curve and you try to change a song or just enter a new GPS destination, you're gonna get into a serious crash. That's exactly what happened to me in December 2016. I split my right arm into two and I had to wait for 18 hours for an operation. Excruciating amount of pain throughout my life. And as I was actually in the hospital, I started to look into this statistic. I was wanting to solve this issue, yet I was unable to. And I found out that nearly at any given point, about 1.5 billion people in the world depend on their motorcycle as their primary mode of transportation. And 3,000 people die every single day because they cannot access that information, their GPS, to ride home safely or change some of their media and do things that you normally should be able to do. So that's when I reached out into my network, and now my partner and co-founder Parth, who's an expert in AR/VR, joined me on this cause to solve distracted riding once and for all. And we applied to Boost VC to incubate this idea to come up with some sort of a solution for this problem. And over 3 months, we went from figuring out, let's put projectors on a bike so that we can present information directly on the road, projected, or put something in the helmet, and eventually we settled on this, which is a heads-up display that's fixed in the helmet that displays relevant information in the rider's field of view, and riders can use voice commands to control all the functions. And this is what it looks like. So as you can see, the rider can always have their rear view camera at hand so they know what's coming behind them. Rear accidents are quite common in motorcycles, and then your GPS and your speedometer is right there, and they can use voice commands. I muted it so that you guys don't hear the road noise over it. That's pretty much it. And from there on, we went on to build our MVP. And during this time, if you can talk to any of the investors that have ever done it, hardware, or even founders, and what I learned is that doing a hardware company is hard. That's constant. Number one, you built your simple prototype and you're going your way to build your MVP, which in and of itself is capital intensive as you go through it. And let's say you do build it and you go to market, you need to figure out your marketing strategy to convince people to spend hundreds of dollars or thousands of dollars on whatever product it is, while managing logistics and supply chain issues to meet your delivery dates on time and make sure the experience is there. And then if you do get your helmet through or your product through the market, then you're worrying about recurring revenue over time. Now, at the end of the day, after all of this is said and done, as a founder, there's one deep fear within your company, which is, what if somebody with more money and more resources comes over and does exactly what you're doing? This is a question that a lot of people either avoid or don't even bother answering and try to give themselves some sort of an answer. And after 3 months of starting that helmet and designing the helmet, I had the same issue too, until I looked at companies that were really successful and found 3 pillars of their success. For my example, I'll use Android because that is part of like a major system, the theory that I've used to build our company and go forward in the product development. Number one is that if your product is worthy enough that people are trying to use it, you are going to have people that copy it. That's an eventuality. No matter what you do, if it's good, people are going to try to copy it. So the only way you can cut that down is by owning the system. And the only way you do that is if your hardware is going out for free. So open source your hardware and try to make your money on licensing or software. That is one of the key pillars. That's the reason why you find Android companies or Chinese knockoff phones that are for $50 still pay Google to use the Android services even though they can create their own software, because nobody wants to use something that's not Android. That's how Android has become a virtual monopoly. And the next part is that by licensing that, you need to be able to build partnerships and communities. Same way as Android, they partnered with multiple partners right away from the beginning. Samsung, HTC, LG, you can name it. Pretty much everybody else but Apple wanted to use Android, and that's how they knocked down Nokia, which is a giant in the industry. And by building a partnership and community, nobody will be able to copy you. Again, another reason why Chinese companies pay Google still, even though they're making a $50 phone, is because they cannot replicate the community that you've created or the content. And finally, a focus on recurring revenue. If you're able to create whether licensing revenue or some other form of data revenue, you're going to be in a very good spot where competition will not be able to catch you. And so in our case, I've used that to our advantage by partnering with existing helmet manufacturers who lack the technical expertise, but have the yearn to be able to integrate and build new products to the market. And using our unfair advantage of the partnerships that we had, we launched our product to market using multiple partners. We're still in closed beta, so I can't discuss further about it. And we focused on creating recurring revenue using the data that we collect from motorcycle riders. So based on how motorcycle riders ride, we can train autonomous vehicle machine learning models to not get into accidents like the Arizona Uber accident that killed the lady, to do fleet management of two-wheeler ride-hailing services in Southeast Asia, for insurance companies to build better insurance models for their consumers, to have a snapshot-like device on motorcycles at all times. We've even been given X-factor ideas, like people have reached out to us to use this data to build real-life three-dimensional maps using inexpensive sensors so that they can have some sort of a device to be made for blind people to grow out of their stick and actually use some sort of a device to navigate the world. It's incredible. And we're really confident that our data is extremely valuable and can be monetized in multiple different revenues that way. And finally, this is against the grain from most YC founders or any other hardware founders that do it. I'm against going Kickstarter because stealth is extremely valuable. If you can build a company using your stealth mode and your unfair advantages, whether it be partnerships with all these companies and such, when you come out of it with a mega launch, you're effectively going to kill your competition overnight. You're going to have a monopoly in the industry at the end of the day. If you do it right, being stealth is one of the greatest gifts that anyone can do, and that is the least used strategy out there. And finally, I believe the future of hardware is going towards services. People are, as Peter Thiel has said before, all the hard problems that are required to be solved have already been solved. The only things that are left are the impossible and the easy ones. So go after the impossible problems and try to solve them using the three pillars that I've told you, and eventually you will be able to have some sort of a decent market share within the industry. And if you're planning on starting a company, I highly recommend it. It is one of the biggest roller coaster rides with all the emotional highs and lows, but you'll feel the most accomplished at the end of even 2 years of working there. And I'm looking forward to the journey there. If you have any questions, and if you're planning on starting anything, or I can answer any of your questions, please let me know, and you can reach out to me on my email up there on the screen.
Awesome. Thank you, Krishna. Appreciate it. So one question from me before we kick things off. What specifically about stealth, what attracted you to the stealth mode initially? Because I think that's a really interesting point we don't normally hear a lot about in terms of, especially for a hardware company, staying in stealth. Just talk a little bit more about kind of the thought process there.
So mainly it's through my network. I've seen a lot of companies that I know, even though it's a simple product, they've overpromised and underdelivered. I believe, I'm a strong believer of your worth of your word. So if you say something, you have to do it. and to be going back on it only reduces your trust in that brand. That's what I've seen happen, and personally, I have not been happy with the product, even though it has over-exceeded my expectations that have come through Kickstarter and such, which is the reason why I'm fortunate enough that I built the reputation in the industry to be able to have unfair advantage to call on helmet companies to say, use my technology, and in the first meeting they had agreed to it. Having that confidence that I can do that and being able to have the option to do it all undercover is the reason why it drove me to stealth. But yeah.
Great. Questions from the audience? You can run the mic.
So a little bit more on the stealth. When you say stealth, are you saying stealth to the consumer and investors and partners, or are you saying like you'll tell your investors and potential partners, but you're not doing a marketing push or unveiling a product online?
That's exactly what I mean. You need to obviously be open to your investors every month so that you can actually show your growth, and they're the ones that can give you the feedback. But marketing, we sold everything that we did without even a website. So honestly, you don't need to market yourself out there right away. There's some sort of value that I find in people saying like, "Hey, we launched," and seeing that viral marketing growth be really good. But honestly, like if you can, use stealth to your advantage. It's one of the greatest things that has ever existed that people don't use at all.
Hi, nice talk. So you mentioned hardware is difficult.
Right? Hardware is hard, yeah. That's the norm in the industry.
So what can be done in the US about this issue? What can be done in the United States? I mean, for the next generation, for the future of hardware development in this country. What is your perspective, having gone through this so far?
Okay. Well, as I've said before, use the pillars that I've given you as an advantage. For us, again, the only way we eliminated the logistics and supply chain and brand development issues is by partnering with these brands to do that work for us. These behemoths in the industry have already built up they have the marketing teams and everything else. We don't need to hire them. We just need to co-brand with them. So when they sell their helmets, it's going to be powered by Etho. They're doing the heavyweight lifting for us without us spending a dime on it. All we are focused on is the technology. So if you can, try to focus, be efficient with the way that you're working with your company, because there's always somebody else that's doing better than it. If they can carry your weight, go for it. That way you're capitally efficient as well, and you're letting go of most of the work that you don't need to unnecessarily do anyways.
Was it important to you that your brand have a presence in any marketing that happened, or were you happy to be white labeled? Or
yes, it was important that we do get co-branded, because that's how otherwise we're not going to have the advantage that we do. The reason why you buy an Android phone and you're unwilling to buy a Samsung Android skin on the phone is because of the Google Android brand. That's important.
Thanks, nice talk. You talked about stealth, I get it. What's your view on patenting and software patents and licensing that technology?
Eventually, there's always going to be a way around it. That's another reason why, again, if you don't tell about it and you build these partnerships, if that itself is a big moat around your company that prevents anybody else from coming in. So there's no need for a patent if you're open about what you're doing. But eventually, once you're out there, then yes, and you've had enough reputation or growth right when the first year and investors are interested, you're obviously going to protect your software with as many patents as you can. But hardware, honestly, it's not required.
In terms of the data that you're capturing, how much value do you think that brings to your enterprise?
How much value do you think
does the data bring to your enterprise?
Yeah, so we've done our projections just in autonomous vehicles. We believe that at the way that that to reach level 5 autonomy, they need access from the secondary mobility data market. Just from that alone, within the next 5 years, where autonomous vehicles are not going to be common, it's around $16 billion at the amount of data that they're going to be processing to train their machine learning models. And the other avenues we didn't even need to, because right now we're focused on actually getting the technology out in the market, and then once everything is there, then we'll focus on the data play at a later stage.
Any other? Oh, awesome.
So are you plotting the line you should take around a curve?
Yes. So actually, yes. So for consumers as well, we're trying to collect information so that, you know, as motorcycle riders, we get cocky after and then we try to take the corners too hard, and then we get into an accident. So we're figuring out how we can understand, you know, better of how you're riding and provide that information back to you, whether you're being reckless or risky in your riding behavior, and give it back to you. One of it is lean angles and plotting the corners and yeah. So if there's additional information that you'd like to give us during our closed beta, we'd love to get some feedback. Yeah. Oh, that's oh, okay, nice. Yeah.
The blind spots. If I'm driving a motorcycle, have you ever figured out how to get around that? I guess because I know this side.
The rear view camera covers nearly 180 degrees, and originally we were planning on using sort of blind spot monitoring systems into the helmet itself, but potentially that sound could be
Distracting.
blocked. Yeah, so we decided not to go forward with that.
Other questions? No? All right. Awesome. Krishna, thank you very much. Appreciate it.